human rights and family and ministry is a lot. I am a lawyer by training. I have worked in the human rights space for about 15 years now. How I feel like my different roles are not divergent, but somehow they meet is I feel like I'm anchored on the scripture, I think in Psalms 89:14, that talks about righteousness and justice are the foundations of his throne. So I feel like somehow I've been doing ministry for all of these years, even if it's not like upfront ministry. But then specifically what I do in terms of pastoral work and ministry is my husband and I oversee the downtown network of churches, but we also lead Mavuno Church Lavington. We've been leading for the past 2.5 years, going on to 3, and it's been the joy of our lives. So that's in a nutshell what I do from work and ministry. My initial reaction was shock and bewilderment, because I mean, when I met my husband, he was working in church, but at the time Mavuno had different tract. So there was the church planting tract and there was a leadership tract. He was not on the church planting one, and so it didn't seem like a possibility in the future. So yeah, so my initial reaction was surprise, was shock, was some resistance, was some hesitance, but I'm glad to say that all of that has changed dramatically over the years. So as I said, when he got the call to lead a church, I was surprised. I was actually a bit shocked by it. But quickly thereafter, I just began to realize that, the Bible talks about how can two people walk together unless they agree. I'm a firm believer that if you are a married couple, God actually gives you a joint vision. And sometimes God gives one person the vision, and then the other person is supposed to sort of like get onto that vision. And so I feel like because you said I do as a married couple, then it means that the vision that you've been given is one. And so quickly thereafter, I began to see what role can I play in ministry. And then it initially began by playing 1 or 2 roles, and then now I am the church and the church is me. Like, there's no separation of roles. It's just been one of those things where God spoke to me very clearly, and it may be just an encouragement to many couples who one person has been called to ministry and the other one doesn't feel like you're called. God doesn't make any mistake, and He's not a God of confusion. He's a God of order. And so if you're married, there's an alignment of roles and calling that happens. So that's what happened for us. It began with a lot of shock. You're doing this. Then now we are completely aligned. Yeah, and enjoying it. That's a great question. How did we navigate the transition to serve together? I think I've touched on this a little bit in the previous question. But I think the one thing I would say is that because you're a married couple, God doesn't give one person a vision. It might come through one person, but the vision is for both of you. And so it's almost like God give me spiritual insights to see what is the role that I need to play. As I said, he's in full-time ministry, which means he's vocational, and I am bivocational. So it means I'm also working in the marketplace. But what has happened is we've just figured out our roles very well. We've also really prioritized. So we both know that even if you're going to do whatever else you're going to do, for us, ministry is a key priority. So once you prioritize and you decide that this thing is a key priority, then it ceases being an area of potential conflict or potential disharmony or disunity. So you all figure out, okay, our priority is ministry, and then even as I'm doing what I do bivocationally, I always know that I have a critical role to play in ministry. And as a result, we work very well together. We've identified our strengths, we've identified our weaknesses, we've identified who carries what, and I must say, I think we are a very well-oiled machine. Yeah. Wow, what has been one of the biggest blessings of serving alongside him? One is I've learned a lot. I feel like I've learned a lot from him. Just watching him has been, I talk about this a lot. He's highly gifted. He's a highly gifted individual. And so working alongside him, I've been able to see how he relates with people, see how he learns, see how he does ministry. And as a result, I've become a lot like him. I've become a lot like him. So there's a learning element of it, which I've really, really enjoyed. But I think another thing is I feel couples working together give other couples permission. You almost model how it looks like to work together in ministry. And I think that's what we've been able to do, because people seeing us see, oh, it's actually possible to work together. It doesn't have to be just one person. And I think there's something really powerful about that, by being permission givers to other people to see that, oh, couples actually do this thing together. And to be honest, I'm such a firm believer in what our senior pastor, Pastor Moridi Wanjao, talks about: family on mission. Like, the entire family is on mission. Like, it's not one thing or the other. It's not family or mission, but you two have an understanding that our family will do this. And it's not because of a job. It's not for a specific season. It's for a really long time. And so it has given us synergies. It's enhanced our marriage as well. It's given permission to many people. We've been able to do this. Even through the ups and the downs, we have stuck through it, and has been very, very helpful and beneficial. Yeah. Wow, are there rhythms that we've put in place to protect the marriage and family while leading others? That's a good question. And when I saw the question, I thought about it in a reverse way. Because we believe in family on mission, we don't aim to protect ourselves away from others. What we do is we include others in what we are doing. And so what that means is that it's not practices that just me and my husband do, but it's how do we take other couples, how do we take people who we are discipling and do it together with them. I think sometimes we can become prone to wanting to cage ourselves and to protect ourselves, and I think there's room for like rhythms of rest, for example, where we take a break every 3 times a year, for things like that. But by and large, I feel like we have really made an attempt to walk alongside others. And so discipleship is one of the things that we talk a lot about at Mavuno, where you're walking with other people, you're walking with other couples, you're walking with your disciples, so they can see your way of life and emulate it. And so that's how I would rephrase that question. As opposed to protecting ourselves, we have actually included other people. And we've actually found so much benefit in that. It has been really, really helpful for us, even in our ministry, catalyzing our ministry by working with others as opposed to excluding others. I hope that makes sense. Mm-hmm. How did we navigate the transition into serving together as a couple? I think this is one of the things that I've said earlier, where I think every couple should come and figure out what your priority is. For us, our priority is ministry. It doesn't matter if I work in the marketplace or not. If your priority is ministry, it just means that some considerable amount of time, amount of resources will then be rerouted towards the thing that you have decided together as a family is important. So just, for example, our house where we live has become a ministry house, because we know that ministry is important. And so it means that every evening or every other evening or some weekends, we are hosting a leadership team or a discipleship group or a couple or one thing or the other. And I feel like some of these things can be potential areas of conflict if you haven't sat down together and decided for yourselves as a couple what then is priority. And because we sat down and we agreed, it just means that then our house is never in contention. It just means that, oh, there's group so-and-so is coming this week, group so-and-so is coming the next week, and we sort of like just work around that. So everybody, including our children, our physical children, know that this is priority to us. And so they are used to it. They are used to coming home and finding many people so many times. It's actually interesting because my son always asks, there are no visitors today, or there's no one from church today, because our house has become one of those places. Also, because of how often we host people don't knock. So whenever people knock, like you guys knocked when you came, whenever you knock, we know these are visitors. But because we host a lot, we are able to open our house. So I think it's one of those things as a couple, we prioritized. We decided that, okay, ministry is priority. if it's priority, this is what it means. It means that you will open your house to different people. It means you will do this in certain ways. It means that you will be available for church events and gatherings and things like that. So I think for me, the advice that I would give to anyone who is in this situation, if you're one of you is in ministry full-time and the other one is not, just decide what is priority to you, and then that way everything about your lives, your resources will be aligned towards that priority. Wow, that's a really good question. How do I manage both roles without losing myself? So my husband often teaches about, I think, how life is structured. Life is structured in like a dichotomy. Oftentimes we feel like it's this versus this. And how we've decided to do ministry and how to do life is, I don't see it that way. I don't see that this is my career and work and then this is my life. For me, it's all mixed together. And I think that's the call of Jesus Christ, that all of us are supposed to go and make disciples. And so it means that regardless of where you are, like I call myself a Paul in my generation. I'm a tent maker, and the tent making that I do is in the field of human rights. But Paul's primary role was in making disciples. We see Paul church planting, we see Paul going on missions, we see Paul doing many things, and that's exactly how I see myself. I see myself as a tent maker in this space known as human rights, but I see myself as a missionary, as a discipler, as a pastor, all of these things. And so for me, those two things don't exist in different parallels. It's not that ministry starts here and ends here, and then that's where human rights continues. For me, everything is meshed together. And every day when I wake up to try and figure out how my day looks like, I just ask God to give me wisdom for the day, because I have these meetings, but I also need to make this ministry priorities and things like that. And so my days and my weeks and my months and my seasons are generally structured around these two things are all in one, and I'm going to do them in a way that Paul did as he was running his tent making business, but still doing these amazing exploits for Jesus Christ. Yeah. That's a good question, because I know women generally carry a lot. Women more often than not are the caregivers, and so you have children in the house and you're taking care of them, but you're also running the home, and there's no milk, there's no this. You need to figure a lot of things out. You need to figure out nannies and things like that. But then also you're in the workspace, you're in the ministry space. So that's a really good question, because I understand and I empathize in the complexity of the day-to-day life of a woman. What I would say is a work-life balance is a lie and it's a mirage. I think it's one of those things where, a mirage in a desert is where you're trying to get to that thing that looks like water, but every time you get there, it keeps on moving. That's exactly how that is. So I'm not a proponent, therefore, of work-life balance, because I don't think it exists. In all of my years, even before I joined ministry, I was trying to chase this thing called work-life balance, but it's not a thing that exists to me. What I have done and what I think is more practical is a work-life integration. As I said previously, for me, I don't see the different facets of my life as different things. I see them as one thing, and I just say, I need to be able to still be a mother and still be a wife and still be this human rights person and still be a ministry. I see it as one thing. I see it that God has given me this calling, and it's in my faithfulness of doing it in the day-to-day that He increases my capacity. So one of the things that I pray about often is, God, increase my capacity to be able to do all of these things that you have called me to do. There's a Bible verse that talks about love the Lord with all your strength, with all of your heart. And when it talks about strength, for me, I'm like, when I'm still young, when I still have energy, I want to be able to still do many of these things. And so I don't chase a work-life balance. I chase a work-life integration. And I just always pray for guidance in how to marry all of those things in a way that makes sense for us. So that's my encouragement to women. I know how much women carry, and I know how many demands are put on women, but I would say that perhaps it's changing your mindset towards a work-life integration and trying to see how everything that you're doing can sort of like integrate beautifully, as opposed to trying to figure out this work-life balance that for me was just a mirage. Yeah. That's such a loaded question. How has saying yes to ministry reshaped my identity and my purpose? Ooh, okay, so it's interesting you asked that question because just this month we've been going through this sermon series called Braveheart Dare to Lead, which incidentally is a series that I was given the opportunity to write for the movement and to preach it. And in the series, we look at Joshua, the biblical character. And I liked Joshua because when we decided that we're going to do a series on leadership, Joshua doesn't feature in your top 3. I think many people would say, oh, leadership is Moses or David or somebody else like that, or Jesus, Christ, or even Paul. But when I read through the Bible, when we're reading through the Bible and I read through the story of Joshua, I was like, this man is an extraordinary leader. And I think that he's often overlooked and often underestimated. But I feel like that question for me was addressed in one of the sermons when we spoke about just the boldness and courage that God called of Joshua. And I feel like saying yes is really the first step in God unraveling like amazing things. When I said yes to this call 2.5 years, I would not have imagined that I would be writing a series, that I would be preaching, that I would be speaking to the teens at Camp Fearless, that I would be doing so many things that I've been able to do. But I just feel like God honors your step of yes. I feel like when you move forward and when you say, I'm going to do this thing, then he sort of like meets you. And I feel like sometimes because, we've had this thing often about God not calling the qualified, but qualifying the called. And it's thinking about characters in the Bible who possibly were afraid or were hesitant. Like Moses, who said that I speak in a stammer. Like Gideon, who said, oh, I can't do this thing, I'm afraid, I'm the least of my tribe. Like who else? Jeremiah, who said that he's too young. And I feel like oftentimes we have these human limitations and incapacities that we see ahead of us. But I like the fact that God says that, imagine just say yes to me and say yes to this leadership, because when you do, I will open it up for you. You will not rely on your own strength and your own capacity. And so that's exactly what has happened to me. I said yes, I didn't do it knowing that I'm going to be able to do so much. But somehow God has just told me, because you've said yes, I'm going to hold your hand and I'm going to lead you into this leadership journey. And it's actually been a really rewarding space of leadership that I said yes, and God has enabled me to do many things because of the yes. So an encouragement to any woman, to any leader who's hesitant, who doesn't feel like they have what it takes, that they were not called or things. Let me tell you, if you met me 3 years ago, I all of those things were at the tip of my tongue, but I just said yes. And I feel like because of that, then an unraveling of the beauty of leadership just began because I said yes. It's a hard question. It's a big question. So you've asked, what does surrender look like for me on a day-to-day basis? And I like that question because surrender is actually a day-to-day basis decision. It's not a one-time thing. So I really like how the question has been phrased. I think for me, surrender, and I borrow a lot from Pastor M's book, Genius of Surrender. I feel like surrender is what all of us as believers, as Christians, are called to be. And how it looks like for me on a day-to-day basis is sometimes I think I know. Sometimes I think I have enough experience. Sometimes I think I have enough knowledge. Sometimes I think surely that is something that I have done it before, right? And I have the benefit of like experience and hindsight. And what surrender looks like for me, even in my parenting, in my marriage, in my ministry, in my work, is telling God, I think I have done this before. This looks familiar territory, but I'm curious to know what you want for me. I'm curious to know how to parent in this situation. I was giving an example recently about parenting in this generation and how, hey, this generation, like parenting is a hard thing because there are so many influences. Like my children come home and they know some things that I haven't taught them, which is very humbling as a parent because you think you're the know-it-all. You think that everything your children know, that it's you who's taught them. But sometimes because of social media influences and media influences and friends and teachers and things like that, they learn many other things. And I think surrender in that stage just means, God, I would like to parent my children in the way of the Lord, but I need you to show me. I need you to show me how to parent a child in the 21st century when there's a lot that's going on Instagram and social media and things like that. But it's also even in the leadership space and saying, I would like you to show me how to lead as a woman. I think that's something that I've had to be able to, grapple with. I don't think there are as many female pastors as there are male pastors. I think it's easy for you to identify, oh, that's a pastor, that's a male pastor, but not as a female pastoring. So I think for me, it's the day-to-day recognition that I need God in my life to shape the decisions that I make, to guide me along this path, that sometimes, even though I feel like I have head knowledge, that I need his guidance ultimately, because he knows yesterday from today and vice versa. So that's how surrender for me looks like. And I would encourage anybody who's thinking about surrender or who is wondering what this surrender thing is. Pastor M's book, Genius of Surrender, is such a simple, small book that speaks so strongly and passionately and so potently about the concept of surrender. Yeah. Wow, you guys are on a roll. You're asking very difficult questions. Oof, what has God taught me behind the scenes quietly about serving? That's such an interesting question. What comes to mind is sometimes it feels overwhelming. Sometimes it feels that the demands of ministry are minute by minute, second by second. There's something new. There's somebody who wants something. There's somebody who's going through a crisis and they need your help. And I think one of the things that God has taught me a lot in seasons like this is the fact that, one, he's my ever-present help in time of need, that I don't have to have an idea of the entire spectrum. Like, there's some things that I might not know. Somebody can come to me with an issue that I have never experienced, but God at that moment will give me wisdom. And this is something that I've noticed my husband a lot. My husband will go into a conversation and say, I have no idea what to do or what to say. And then he'll say, God gave me the words. And I was like, oh, wow, lucky you. And I've begun to rely on that a little bit more for, God, I'm about to get into a situation that we are going to talk with a couple. We've never experienced what they're experiencing, but just show me that. So I think God has shown me that. But also in the being overwhelmed by ministry sometimes, he's also shown me that truly your labor in the Lord is not in vain. That every second, every minute, every hour I spend in God's work will be credited to me as righteousness. It's such a humbling thing, because sometimes, this thing can get heavy. And sometimes you just need the assurance of, imagine, just plow through, because every minute matters to God. And also I think because when you think about this thing as the urgency of souls, this is the core of ministry. It's not just people or faces, it's actually souls that are at stake. And so when I reorient my mind and he speaks to me and tells me, imagine, I know you're feeling tired, but this is what is at stake, then in my mind, I begin to just say, okay, God, I know you have me. And as a result, God has given me rest in very interesting ways. As a result, he's given me perspective and wisdom and discernment in very interesting ways. But the last thing I'm going to say on that is, in the world, what I was used to is that for you to become a good manager, for example, you needed 10,000 hours. We all know about the 10,000 hour rule. You need 10,000 hours. And 10,000 hours is approximately 3 hours a day for 10 years for you to practice that thing, for you to become a pro, for you to become a well sought after manager, for example. But the kingdom doesn't operate with earthly principles. So when I began ministry, I thought that I would have to work so hard to be able to become this pastor. In maybe 10 years, I'll be a good pastor. But somehow in the spiritual world and with God short circuits processes. Because you said yes to the call, I feel like God enables you to really move along in this journey really, really quickly. And so would I have thought that I would be leading more churches in 3 years because I said yes? No. Would I have thought that I would be speaking and preaching on pulpits? No. But God somehow he catalyzes and he short circuits processes for you. And so these are some of the things that God has been speaking to me and showing me about the mystery of serving him, and the mystery of following him. Oh wow, that's a really interesting question. So I'll start by saying that leadership is complex whether you're a man or a woman. I feel like there's just leadership challenges. The nature of leadership is that you're leading different people, they have different personalities, they are different. Oh, right. Okay. Okay. So that's an interesting question on challenges that women face in leadership and how to overcome them. I think that I'll start by answering the question and saying that I feel like leadership is difficult, period. Whether you're a woman or you're a man, I think it's very difficult because I think that you are, any leadership space requires you to exert yourself. It requires you to lead a team that's different from you. It requires you to lead a team that's different from each other. And so there are so many complexities and things that you have to take into consideration. And so I do agree that leadership is just generally difficult. But leading as a woman is interesting because there are two sides to it. As I see it, one side is obviously the challenges that come with it. Maybe people don't take you seriously. Maybe people don't think that you're good enough. Maybe that you have to prove yourself a little bit more. But I also see an upside to leading as a woman. I see a side where women have some very distinct, innate characteristics that they bring to the table, like just your femininity, like your ability to win people's hearts using what God has given you, for example. And I think that any man, including all of you in this room, none of you have that capability because you don't have that femininity, obviously. And I feel like it's a unique trait. It's a unique thing that God has given women, that you're able to persuade people by just your femininity. And I think that's a really awesome thing. I think that sometimes leading as a woman can be beautiful because if you lead alongside a man, you can see their leadership and you can complement it. Because I think we've been given some really amazing ways of being able to complement that leadership. And because, God is interesting with his creation. God created man and woman in his likeness and in his image. So is God a man? No. Is God a woman? No. Does God have both traits because that's how he was able to create us in his likeness and image? Yes. So it means that a woman can lead from a godly perspective because she has God within her. A man can lead from a godly perspective because he has God within him. But because we are different in our anatomy, in our structure, we both have different ways of leading. And so for me, what I would say as I wrap up that question is there'll always be challenges in leadership. But I want to zero in and zoom into the specific traits that I have that are beautiful, that were given to me by virtue of being a woman, that I can use effectively in leading people. And as I said, some of those feminine traits that we've been given, our ability, we're very discerning as women. I think we think more. I'm not saying men don't think, but I think there's an introspection that women have that is really beneficial when you're leading. There's a way that women are able to multitask. I think there's so many beautiful things that women have. And for me, that's how I try to lead. I try to lead from those strengths, even as I acknowledge that there are some challenges that are in the spectrum of leadership. Yeah. So this question is for those who are serving passionately at some point and then they fell off along the way and maybe they want to return or they don't even know how to return. I think it's a really interesting question. It's a good question because the reality of this journey of faith is that we have many of those stands. You have moments where you have fire and then something just happens along the way that you now are not able to serve for whatever reason. And to be honest, I am speaking from experience when I answer this question because there are moments when I served very passionately and diligently and consistently and then I sort of just fell off along the way. I think what I would say is that the beauty of the Christian faith is it's not a legalistic faith. It's not a faith that's hinged on do this, do that, do this number of times, do this number of times. It's a relationship with God. And so the first thing that I would tell anybody in that situation is that God, more than anything, wants a relationship with you. Imagine you with a child, imagine you with a spouse, imagine you with a friend, how a relationship is built between two different entities, two different people. That's exactly how God is. Primarily primarily, he just wants you. That's the first thing. Because I feel like sometimes you might feel shame and guilt and you're wondering, oh, I haven't done this, I haven't done this, I haven't done this. But I think the first thing is God just wants you before he even wants your time and your skill and all of that stuff. I think it's in you spending time with God that you now become passionate about what he's passionate about. And your heart then gets drawn to what his heart is drawn towards. And so no sooner you will find yourself wanting to be close to his people, wanting to be close to the call over your life. And I think it's very easy then to gravitate towards the things that God is calling you for. But I would just say, imagine, it's not about jumping hoops. It's not about doing things for God. It's just about loving God and being in relationship with him. That's the starting point. And then everything else will follow through, because we don't have a legalistic faith that's about rules, do's and don'ts. It's about a relationship with God. I would, however, encourage anybody who's not serving to do so, because I feel like it's at the point of serving that you grow in your faith, that you grow with other people, that many things within you are sharpened and are harnessed by God. Yeah. What a question, what a question. Wow, the rebellious people who are marked for greatness but are running away from the call. First, I would tell you, you're not the only one. The Bible illustrates very many rebellious people who ran away from the call. You know, we have, and maybe it's not even rebellion, maybe it's doubt, because I think sometimes people will doubt themselves or will have an apprehension about them and their role. And I talked about earlier, Moses ran away from God. Moses told God that pick somebody else. On a number of occasions, he told God, pick somebody else, because look at me, look at how I speak in a stammer. Don't choose me. You'd have chosen even Aaron, my brother. So that's one. We see Jonah, very famous for running so far from God that he finds himself in the belly of a fish, right? And we see many people who were given this call but somehow just run away. I'm also thinking about Matthew, the tax collector, or even Zacchaeus. People who were really far, but somehow God sees. You see, because God is our creator, he sees what he created in us. He knows what he deposited in you when he was creating you. And so he knows that even though you might be distracted by so many things, he knows that the deposit within you is such a strong thing. And for me, what I would say is, you can run, but you won't hide. Because somehow God just has a way of locating people. God has a way of just saying, you know, when I was creating Lawrence, I knew that he was going to be this person. And somehow, even in your running away, he's going to find you the same way he found Jonah, the same way he found Matthew, the tax collector, or Zacchaeus, or Gideon, or these other people who are running away from the call. What I would also say is that God is a God of mercy. Because sometimes we see it as rebellion, but sometimes people run away for different reasons. People run away because they feel unworthy. People run away because they feel, I'm not like so-and-so, I'm not called. People run away because of doubt, because of, I don't feel good enough to do this, or I feel too sinful. But what I love about God is that he actually wants those people. There's a verse in the Bible that I really love. It's one of my favorite verses. It's in 1 Corinthians 1, I believe from verse 16 or thereabouts, and talks about, it says, brothers and sisters, think of who you are when you are called. Not many of you are wise by human standards. Not many of you are influential. Not many of you were born of noble birth. But I chose the foolish things of this world to shame the wise. I chose the weak things of this world to shame the strong things of this world. I chose the things that are lowly and are despised to nullify the things that are, so that none of you can boast. And I love that verse because it shows the heart of God. It shows that even though you feel unworthy, even though you feel not good enough, even though you feel sinful, God actually wants you. God says, I chose the weak things of this world to shame the strong things. So it means that even if you think you're strong, God is saying, no, I want the weak things. I want the foolish things. Because it's in these foolish things that I will now exalt myself through them. And so just run, but somehow along this running journey, God is going to find you, he's going to locate you, because that's the kind of God that we serve. We serve a God who actually looks for his people. He runs after his people. Isaiah 30:18 talks about how the Lord longs to be gracious to you. God is jumping hoops to look for you and to locate you. I have a story of being far from God, but God somehow located me in my waywardness. And I know many people have such stories of God, of being so far away from God, but God somehow just draws you to him. So just run, but God is going to find you the same way he found Jonah, the same way he found me. He's going to still find you. Yeah. I love that question, because that question is about reawakening. And your question was, how do I think my story can reawaken other people, other couples from serving and being aligned with God's purpose? I love that question because it speaks to me very personally and deeply, because I believe that my story is one of reawakening and a story of redemption, and it's a story of relocation, like God actually relocating me. I feel like what I would tell people who feel a bit far, or who people who feel like they are not serving as they should, or are distant from God, I would just say that I'm sitting on that reawakening theme, because I feel like God is the God who reawakens our purposes, our passions, our giftings. And I feel like I love God because it's not so much what we do. It's just us saying, okay, yes. And then somehow God just realigns everything in collaboration with our yes. I feel like for me, my personal story is a story of my spiritual giftings being reawakened. I feel like many of them were docile, they were just lying there, they were unutilized, they were unknown even to me, but then God somehow reawoke that in me. I feel like my story is a story of reawakening my passion for God. And I feel like somehow God just saw, hey, this girl, she's gone so far, but I'm going to bring her back and I'm going to reawaken her passion for me. And somehow he just did that. I enjoy reading God's word. I enjoy speaking about God. I'm enjoying doing this recording. I'm enjoying because it's about God. So, and I feel like God is true to his word. He's a God who reawakens us in many ways. And so even if you're far, God is asking you for a chance to reawaken the things that are within you. Because remember, it's almost like, if I can give an analogy of excavation, it's almost like you're trying to excavate diamond or gold from a gold mine. There are people who actually are very skilled in knowing that the gold is found here, diamonds are found here. That's God for us, because God created us. He knows that there's diamonds inside of you. He knows that there's gold inside of you. And what he's doing is he wants to excavate them through this amazing reawakening process. And so for me, it's just an encouragement that God knows what you have inside of you, and be open to him reawakening his purposes over your life, reawakening your passions and your spiritual giftings the same way he did for me. All right, so I feel like what I have seen in my Christian faith over the past couple of years has been the power of serving God. I always say that a realization that came to me, and this was our theme verse as the Mavuno Movement last year, about how our labor in the Lord is not in vain. That's such a clarion call for me, because I feel like sometimes people think that serving is a thing they are doing for somebody else. They are doing for the pastor, for example. But I just want to encourage you that, we're actually creatures of service. We were created to serve. If you remember in the Old Testament, in the book of Genesis during the creation story, the essence of God creating man was to be in fellowship and communion with him. That's exactly what serving is. And I feel like serving then has become a choice when in essence it was created for all of us to do it happily and willingly. And so I just want to say that service to God is a call that we were all given. But also what serving does for you and I is that it aligns us to God's purposes for us. I feel like serving just opens our mind to who God really is. When you serve, you just get to see so many things that you would never have seen before. And I feel like serving is such a great gateway even for the promises and the purposes that God already has in your life. I've had many stories of people who have served and doors have been opened, and it's not an ATM transaction for I serve and then I get this type of thing, but it's just saying that I want to align with God's purposes in my life fully and wholly and completely. And God is here reminding you that every single minute, every single hour, every single year you spend serving me is never in vain. So that's just my encouragement to anybody who's thinking about this serving thing. Serving is an amazing space for alignment with God's purposes over your life. So I hope that you will stand up, you will be awakened to serve God in amazing ways, and know that your labor in him is never, ever in vain. agree.